Welcome to High Stakes, episode 39. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. High Stakes is produced by Mike Lawrence. You can find him on Twitter at Awesemo. And we're joined today by a DFS legend, one of the OGs in the DFS space, and you probably recognize him. I'd say one of the first DFS celebrities because he was on commercials all over the place after he won a Millie Maker all the way back in 2015. But he's still playing. He's still going, absolutely crushing MLB DFS this year. You can find his DraftKings username is The Fantasy Bros. His Twitter is at Bobby Gomes DFS. I'm here with Bobby Gomes. Bobby, how are you doing today?
Doing good, yeah. It was a long time. It was actually November of 2014. Was when that all
That's
went
when you
down.
won the Millie? Man, November of 2014. Okay.
Yeah, November of 2014. Me and my brother just basically on DraftKings for 3 weeks and win the Millie. We were playing on one account. Like it was, we didn't really know like what it was, right? Like we didn't know what this all was.
Yeah,
Now,
well, I want to get into that story. So I sent you some of the questions that I ask, as I sometimes do, sometimes don't. I sent you a list of like some of the template of the general questions, but that wasn't even included. Like I do think that I really want to talk about your backstory because it is so unique that you were like sort of a little bit of a celebrity. Like you were in every commercial break all across the US at the very least for I don't know months way back in the beginning days of DFS, and a lot of the top players from that time are no longer playing DFS. The majority, I would say, are no longer playing DFS, but you are still crushing it this year. Like I've seen your name at the top over and over in the MLB streets, which has been fun to see that you are still crushing it. But first, I do want to ask you about that username. So it is The Fantasy Bros. The obviously implication is that you have a brother who does DFS with you, and of course, I watched some of the interviews and stuff. You and I believe your brother's name is Dave.
yeah.
Is Dave still involved at all, or tell me why the username, and is it still accurate?
Yeah, it's an ode to the original Fantasy Bros. Me and my brother, when that whole situation happened, we did play like a ton, like basically going back and forth. We collaborated on that specific lineup, all that base, all the early DFS stuff. But for me, it wasn't. It was more of something that I wanted to kind of follow, where my brother had different pursuits, and
Yeah.
we've been playing like fantasy sports literally since 2000 together, like in leagues. Like I don't have a poker background. I don't have a computer science background. I just been playing basically since I was 10 years old. Fantasy baseball, fantasy
Wow.
football, fantasy basketball, fantasy hockey. Like instead of playing video games, like that's what I played. So for like 14 years prior to us like winning, like we were heavy, just playing season long stuff. So yeah,
So I got the impression from that early interview that it was kind of your idea. Like you were the one who really wanted to get into DraftKings, and you kind of like brought it up to your brother. Hey, do you want to do this with me? Is that accurate? Like you kind of
no,
talked to.
it was actually the other way around. So it was
Oh,
Dave.
interesting.
It was Dave who he basically knew about DK before. I was very skeptical on getting into it. And then the week prior to us winning, Dave finished 11th in the Millie.
Wow.
Yeah. So there was like this for some reason, whatever it was, we both thought we could actually win, right? Like it's weird to say that because the odds of actually, you have to believe you can do it in a sense.
Yeah.
But then like to go out and actually do it is kind of like, whoa, that actually happened. And then it's just like, we didn't know anything about, we hadn't, like I said, all these sites schematically are based on poker sites. We didn't know anything about this really, right? Like outside of just basically our season long background, which was, I think, underrated to most people.
Yeah.
Like we definitely were doing this pretty hardcore for a long time in a different kind of system, I would say.
Right. Season long.
Yeah, and see that being season long.
Yeah.
So yeah, at the time, the edges were obviously a lot different than what they are now.
Yeah.
So the ability for someone to do that was a lot easier. I guess you still have to get phenomenally lucky. Like
Yeah.
we had Jonas Gray and he scores 4 TDs. Like you don't get anytime you win in DFS, like you're getting lucky, right? Like
yeah, absolutely.
we're embracing variance, it's gambling. But yeah, it just everything kind of lined up, right? Uh,
So is it, you say that Dave had one? So does he have, he has his own username, or at least at
he
one
has
point
his
he
own
did?
user. So it was on his username. Like this wasn't on my original username.
Oh, really? So it was not the Fantasy Bros that
It
won the
was
Millie.
not the Fantasy Bros that won the
Okay,
yeah. So
gotcha.
I myself didn't, for whatever reason, I wasn't. I like I didn't have cash to play. Like this is just something like we're getting
Right.
into play. We both want to play. And I forget what it was. I think I was going through something with a girl, and he was like, "Oh, just play on my stuff. Like, take your mind off whatever's going on." So we were talking through lineups on the phone, and that specific lineup, like I'm building it on his thing, and like we're basically talking about it. I end up hitting submit. Like it's a Rogers team. That's the one team like hand build that I'll always remember building. Right? Like
Right.
I built a million teams at this point. I specifically remember building this team. And I
And
think
it was
I
Aaron
always think
Rodgers.
I remember like the whole situation to like down to a T of what basically happened and basically our conversation. Like if he never talks about Brandon Marshall never hits that team. I would have never played Brandon Marshall. AJ Green was on that. Jonas was someone like we had both kind of pegged. He had pegged him earlier in the year. My brother's like really good at like spotting rookies and being like, he's in all that stuff. Me at this point, I just like to get the information um, as it kind of comes. You know how you
Yep.
play DFS, like that stuff doesn't
Sure.
really matter at this point.
Yeah.
But at the time, like that was cool, right? Like we had known basically how the Pats had played Indy the two previous times. So in the playoffs the year before in Foxborough, Blount ran for 3 touchdowns versus that same Colts D line. Similarly, uh, in the regular season, he had like he had like a couple big games versus Indy defensive line.
LeGarrette Blunt did.
LeGarrette Blunt did.
Okay.
So going into that week, this was, mind you, when the Millie was on Mondays.
Right. It was Sunday through Monday. So like it
Yeah,
started at noon on Sunday, but went through
yeah,
Monday Night Football back then. Yeah.
yeah. So you're basically sweating that like sweating the Sunday and the Monday. Like we were sweating Lev's final drive for Pittsburgh that night. But it was more about uh we were just trying to, so Blount was out. So I think the consensus was Vereen was going to be the back, but both of us know, being avid Patriots fans at that time, that Vereen's not going to run between the tackles. Bill's going to want to keep Luck off the field. So this is like team watch the game stuff, I guess.
Right.
It's probably valuable in that scenario. Like everyone kind of shits on team watch, but you can get
Right.
edges.
For sure.
And instead of Vereen, I think we played a good bit of Jonas on our 27 teams, and like
27 teams. I was going to ask.
yeah,
Because these are the days when
$1,000 worth of
it was
teams.
unlimited at the time, wasn't it? Like you could play
Yeah,
500 if you
I think it
wanted
was
to.
like $27 worth an entry. I don't know if it was unlimited. They might have maybe they made rules. I'm not really positive because
I don't
honestly,
remember the timeline exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I
Right.
wasn't multi-entering like like to the like maxing stuff out. I didn't do that till like a couple of years later.
Right.
Um, but yeah, they hit my brother up and they were like, we want to shoot, like you have a good shot to win based on like everything we're looking at. We want to like shoot this at a bar. We'll pay for it. And our family owns a restaurant in the north end of Boston. And we were like, oh, we'll just do it there. Like we wanted to be in a comfortable situation.
Sure.
Till this day, DK has not paid for that that night out, by the way.
Oh, really?
So
Did
I
they say
still
they were
need to
going
send
to?
them
Oh
that
no.
bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they didn't pay. They didn't pay for that.
They were
So
like, these guys want to mill you. They don't need the money.
they don't need the money. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we signed. We didn't. They told us they were shooting like a documentary. So they get away with like free everything here. Like that's
Right.
it ends up being a free commercial.
Yeah.
And we end up being like a free promo code. We signed our rights away. Like it's pretty much like, yeah, for a documentary. We didn't know we should have had a lawyer there. You know what I mean? Like we
Right.
weren't thinking, remember, we're very green in this scenario.
Yeah. Right. And you're pretty young too at this time.
Very young. Yeah. Like, and my family doesn't know about stuff like this. Like this is stuff that's way over like our head.
How old were you when you won the Millie?
I was 24, he was 23. We're not like super young, but we're young enough to be
That's
like,
pretty young. I mean, yeah.
yeah.
Can't even play till you're 18.
Yeah. So it's just like, it was an interesting little situation. We're live, we're sweating it. This is a real sweat. It's organic. these are like, I was looking at the commercial earlier. Ended up
Yeah,
finding.
Tambo shared it with us. He went and found the commercial and shared it with us,
Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
was a good one.
It was, yeah, and it was like very, very. It's a sweat that like you'll never really get that high during that sweat and the lows of it. Like we didn't want to know. Aguiar was in the back. John Aguiar, he handles
Yeah.
VIP at DK. He was letting us know like when like what we had to watch out for is
Oh
definitely
gosh.
on at the end.
Yeah.
Um, and then you're like rooting it in, and then it happens, and it's just like so surreal, insane experience. And then we get a call, they're doing a commercial out of this like in April of 2015. And it wasn't for just like a couple months. Like you'd think like they just did this for free. So they didn't
Right.
pay anything for this great commercial. It scored well in all their like surveys and everything. They
Yeah.
shot it great. They did a great job in shooting it. And we're everywhere immediately. And it's so fun. It was on like everything. Like it was on the Super
I know.
Bowl,
I remember.
NBA
Everybody remembers.
finals, like and it originally the commercial just getting smaller and smaller, and it was like Dink, CSU, my brother, myself, and then it just ends up being like me and Dave, and then like Dave's name and me, and it just like becomes like a little controversial between the two of us because we're like, hold on, like this is. You know what I mean? Like, why am I not you know what I mean? Like, why am I not getting the same airtime? And like,
Right.
why is my name not on there? And it's like, we had a little back and forth about that. That was like a little,
Like you were squabbling with your brother, or like you were upset at DraftKings?
we were upset at DraftKings pretty much for how
Okay.
it kind of like went down. But yeah, we were going at it too because we were like, what is this? Like, why didn't you say like we should have did more to like protect ourselves within the situation, I guess. But like
Sure.
I said, like we didn't know what we were stepping into, and no one really did.
Yeah.
It was never an issue about money. We split the money, like that was whatever. Uh, but it was just like, and we're competitive too, so it's just
Sure.
it's just like who's bet, like who meant more to this, and like
Right. Right.
you know what I mean. Like,
It sounds like right now you're giving your brother credit for some of the plays at the very least. Like you're not trying to say
100%. No,
it was all me or
I
anything
don't
like
win
that.
this without my brother. Like, let's
Yeah.
get that straight away. He doesn't win it without me. Like, we kind of set on this journey within fantasy sports together. Like, this was something like when I say, like, people say, oh, season long back. And I was legitimately grinding this out, like playing with my friend. Like, I would start all the leagues, I would do all the stuff. Like, I do all the research that I thought was like necessary to like I don't know,
Sure.
enjoy it. Yeah, I wasn't playing we were playing for like side money, stuff like that, but it wasn't like playing daily, but it still is something that translates, right?
Yep.
Um,
I mean, I come from the same background. I was a season long player before a DFS player, never a poker player, or anything like that. So kind of a similar background in some ways to you as far
yeah,
as how we got involved. Just like I love fantasy sports. Now I can play fantasy sports against tens of thousands of people and make astronomical money. So I get it.
yeah. But it was that commercial pretty much like triggered the player pool that we kind of have today. Like what they got in trouble for, like throwing as much money as they did behind that. Obviously, it's kind of disingenuous in the fact that like they're regular guys, everyone can win. Maybe it gives off that spiel to people that that's
Right.
actually what the case is. So I get what the people's issues were with that. If you go back, it's a tough commercial to find. But when at that time, like it was not a difficult
No,
commercial.
it was you just had to turn it on TV.
You
And it
just
was
had
going
to
to be
turn
there
on a
within
TV
20
for like
minutes.
3 seconds. It wasn't
Yeah.
even 20 minutes. It was
Right.
like every 3 minutes on a commercial break. Like we're in there.
Yep.
Um, yeah.
So they didn't pay you. So DraftKings said we're going to come out to you. You said, well, we'll host it at my family's restaurant, kind of assuming that they were going to cover the bill, which they didn't do.
They
And
said they
also,
were covering the bill. They did
they,
not cover the bill. Yeah.
you should reach out to somebody if you haven't already done so. You should, I mean,
No,
it seems like
I'm just breaking balls. I'm not upset about the bill. We had a good
okay,
night that night.
sure.
Everyone had a good time in general. And it's
And
a great
you had
life.
Aguiar there. So I was going to ask you if you think
Yeah.
that they sent because they had a date to do it and like they reached out ahead of time. I was wondering if like did they send people out to like the top 5 teams in terms of like chances of winning? But it sounds like you're probably the only ones that they were.
We were in the area, so it made the most sense. Yeah.
Oh, that's also true. Good point.
On the bill thing, I'm just giving Aguiar knows like
Okay.
He's given me back enough. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
You're just but But you do, I mean, you maybe should have been paid for the commercial. I guess at that point you're also
I
just
think we
like,
should have been paid for the commercial. If you think about the
yeah,
promo code that we were like, we're literally legitimately a free promo code. Like
yeah.
I don't know. I would have if we had gone about it differently. Me and Dave definitely would have figured out. Would have had a lawyer there. Like I don't know what we were
Yeah.
thinking, but like I said, very young.
And I think that was probably part of your appeal also, is that you did come across as just like everyday dudes. Like you weren't the like super like skinny glasses wearing quant who's just like he's been running the Sims, there's no way I can beat this guy. It was like these guys know sports and I know sports, so I if they can win just by knowing sports, then I can win sports. I think was kind of the appeal of you guys in particular, was just like these guys look like me, so like if they can win, then I can win too. Might be part of the reason that DraftKings wanted
Yeah,
to air
100%.
that commercial over and over.
And you see it in all the books. If anyone had a guess, like who wouldn't be playing in 2024, me and my brother out of that commercial probably would have been at the top of the list, right? Like that's people. Even it's even written about in that book, like
Dueling with Kings.
Dueling with Kings. Like
I was going to ask you about that.
yeah, and me personally, as like a competitor and like how I am, like I see stuff like that, and I remember people saying like, "Oh, he's a fish, this, that, the other," and it just that's the type of stuff that makes me like really get going because that's the type of stuff that all right, we'll see, that's where I want to that lights the fire,
And that sort of came across in, so I read Dueling with Kings a year or two ago, and I have not refreshed myself on it. But as I recall, the way you came across was you had a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. Like the way he wrote about you was like, this young guy won a milli, and people don't seem to be taking him as seriously as he would like to be taken, was kind of the impression that I got from the book. Is that accurate?
We didn't tell
maybe.
people that, but that's the way we both felt. Like the two of us like felt like, yeah, like we can. I didn't think that there was anyone. I don't know, and I was probably naive to think it at the time too. Like obviously people had been playing for a little bit.
So he's
But
like compete
I
with
think the
anybody.
way people made it sound was not like we understood construction. What we didn't understand was like bankroll management to contest selection. We didn't have the poker background. I think that comes into play huge at that time period. Yeah, so those were issues like from a player. You have to understand like where your weaknesses are at that point. That was probably it. Well, not just it, but just basically two glaring things that I would have said would have been difficult for us to be competitive daily in that time period.
Yeah. So that book came out a few years later, right? It didn't come out like the same year that you won the Millie or the next year it came out. I feel like not for at least a couple years
it
after
came
the
out
fact.
like a year afterwards. There was another one too. I was looking it up, and it's basically like $1 billion fantasy,
Oh,
and they
not familiar
use
with that
like
one.
our image and likeness as basically shadows. Talk about everyone else, and this one came out like 3-4 years ago, and I'm looking at like I'm the only one that's still really playing here. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I don't know why they're acting like we're not playing. Like I'm still here. Like I don't know. It's kind of an indication like everyone else kind of like is. I don't know. But not like I shouldn't say that because Drew and all those guys are still playing, but it's just like
Sure.
in terms of like I was looking at people that, well, I think CSU's in it. He was still playing. Like there's a bunch of,
Yeah.
but like
But there are a lot of names from that time period who were
it's
like
not
the
like I'm
biggest
not
names in the
playing,
industry.
right?
Yeah.
Like yeah,
Right.
like fine, like do your I don't know. It's just it's stuff that like isn't really a big deal, but to me, just because of my own personal ego, like I
Because
think
you're competitive. Yeah.
yeah, because yeah, but I
And,
just
and that's, I mean, that's often what leads people to success, right? Having a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, like sort of like the Michael Jordan thing. I took that personally, like finding little things that upset you to make you go even harder, maybe like
this is
to
something I do all the time.
yeah.
Like I literally find every little like edge to like. I remember last summer during MLB, I was like really trying to. There was stuff that I really wanted to get done, and I was on fire, and it was just like I don't. I'm competitive, and I want to step on throats. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it sounds like I'm not the best player by any means. I don't. When I'm playing, I think I am. I
Sure.
think you have
You've
to
got
feel
to.
that way.
Yeah.
Like you have to feel that way. I know I'm not. Like, no, I'm not. I know like Utica, FJ Bourne, like there's
Right.
very good BK. Like these guys, I can never do what they do.
Yeah.
But if you don't think that you can win or have that like confidence, and like getting into your process, and just like there's no reason to play if you don't feel that way, right?
Right. You got to at least feel like you can win. And you've been absolutely, as I said at the top of the show, you've been absolutely crushing MLB DFS this year. It was funny that the first time you and I talked about potentially coming on the show, you were like, well, just let me get a hit first. I just want to win something before I come on the show. And then like 6 hits later, then I'm like, hey, by the way, weren't you going to come on the show after you got a hit? So we scheduled it after you've had a pretty hot streak going here this MLB season up there. You and Engelman, I'd say there are probably a few others who are like in that group of like just been crushing it the whole MLB season.
And Bellman's super sharp.
Oh, Bellman, yeah, good point. Yeah,
was that who you said?
No, I said Josh Engelman has also been crushing it, but yeah, you're right. Matthew Bellman has also won. He's in that same category of just like winning over and over.
Yeah, FJ Bourne.
Yeah,
two of those guys. They're always nerdy tenor, aha, bro.
Yep.
They're all ballers. They're very, very, very good play. They can do stuff that I can't do, right? Like,
sure.
Especially a guy like nerdy, you know what I mean? So I have to work probably extra hard.
Yep. Running individual sims and stuff like that. Totally different process than anybody else in the industry, which certainly gives him an edge.
I do look at sims, right? But they're just not my own.
Right.
I'm looking at all the sims basically pretty much around the industry. I've been doing that since like last year. Been running optimals, figuring out optimals since like 2017 when I realized that was important, because you have to see the board, right? And that's the biggest thing, is kind of seeing the board, know where people are going based on contest size, projections. For me, that's kind of like where I start. Then it's just getting in the deeper stuff that are finding inefficiencies and projections, stuff like that.
All right. Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit more. I'll ask you more specific questions as we go. Still, I mean, so we've talked about it a little bit. So one of your big edges in your Millie was he's a Patriots running back, right? I was going to ask you your favorite sports team, favorite athletes, and where you're from, all that kind of stuff. You said that your family owns an Italian restaurant in North Boston. Is that right? In the North End?
In the North End of Boston, yeah. It's basically like I'll never be a full-time DFS player, because working in the restaurant, like, right, my mother's getting older. Like, it's pretty much flipping. Me and my girlfriend are taking control. I manage that, and then I'm playing DFS.
I didn't realize that.
This is our absolutely busiest month of the year.
Wow.
Like August. So this is like if I'm running errands, doing stuff. So it's there's other stuff that's basically going on. I'm currently a dad of a 15-month-old. My girlfriend's pregnant also. So.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're pretty busy these days.
I'm pretty busy. I'm very busy currently.
And I assume then that you grew up outside of Boston or somewhere around Boston.
I grew up in the North End. Like, I'm a creature of habit. I grew up in the city kid through and through.
And that's if I remember, that's like Little Italy in Boston, right? It's in the North End.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of Italian restaurants out there. Okay.
Yeah, the whole neighborhood's all Italian restaurants. It's pretty much the Freedom Trail. Everything's on the Freedom Trail.
Yep.
You can walk everywhere. It's a lot different than the rest of the country, I would say, in that regard.
And in that sense, so you're from that area and you are a Boston sports fan?
Love to hate Boston sports, I would say. I'm like the Brady's, Manny, Pierce. I love those teams. I grew up with those teams. These teams now, like, I don't feel as much connection with.
Okay.
I feel like I live right near the Garden, so I find issue with like the traffic and everything else. And I don't like fun as much as I did in my 20s. So
those are all Boston athletes when I lived in Boston. Brady, Manny, nice. Pierce. I'm trying to think. I think Pierce might have been like right at the end of. No, I think pretty sure they were all there. But I lived in Boston from 2002 through 2007 or 8, I think. So that was like right in the prime of like Brady.
Yeah,
the Red Sox won their first. Yeah. The Red Sox won their first World Series while I was there. The Patriots won. I think they started winning before I got there, but they continued winning after I got there. So that's those were the days for Boston sports, and I guess they're still looking pretty good, but just not winning quite as much these days.
This Patriots team is bad, but yeah,
sure. You don't think this Patriots team is going anywhere, even after signing Ezekiel Elliott?
I'm not a Zeke guy.
Me neither.
You don't pay a premium for an aged running back. Now that he's aged,
no.
$6 million
Yeah.
running back position doesn't seem to be a good idea in
Yeah,
this
that
day.
was I did not understand the signing, but I'm also heavy on Ramondre Stevenson in best ball, so I also didn't like it from that perspective. All right, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit more about your background and just some questions that I ask everybody. Starting with, we'll start with both statistics and computer programming. Let's lump them together. What is your experience as far as statistics and or computer programming goes?
Absolutely nothing. Like literally all the stuff I need to know through like data optimization, I've learned through people that play DFS. Like it's all in regards to DFS. Stat like in terms of stat. So like I wrote about it when I was a kid. Like if I was like 8 years old, I was in a like the newspaper. I knew every team's batting order, every team's average. This is for baseball specifically, but pretty much every sport. Knew every line in hockey. Like I just knew I was always on like sports information, I guess.
Okay.
And for some reason, that was something that I was like very obsessive over. Um, and in baseball specifically, like just go I home run leaders, average, lineups, like weird stuff that no 8-year-old should be interested in. I was
Right.
interested in.
So you have a history of being interested in it. Maybe like you understand statistics, but it's just not something that you are formally
It
trained in.
sounds very trivial. Like it's obviously there's people that have degrees but it kind of set me on the path to find interest in fantasy sports, I guess, right? So
It's again similar to myself. Like I have zero formal training in any kind of stats, but it is something that I grew up watching sports. I was always obsessed with the stats, and then once it came to fantasy sports, like it was like, oh, fantasy points per game, like those kind of things. Like you would have those basic stats, and I was like always looking at those, like, okay, how have those updated? Things that seem so like insignificant now or so significant to me as a kid. That
yeah,
just kind of
yeah,
leads to being interested in different types of stats as we get more advanced into this stuff, right?
yeah.
And then computer programming. You also don't have any particular background in computer programming.
No, none at all. Wish I did. Same thing with stats. Could have used a couple more stats classes in college. Or just took any. But yeah, I neither no real experience.
Okay. But you know some people that you wrote about this a little bit, that you know some people who are involved a little bit more in computer programming. Have you like brought it into your process at all? Like do you run your own kind of optimizer or anything like that?
I know how to use an optimizer like through and through pretty
Okay.
much. I can use pretty much everyone in the industry. One of the things about being on that commercial, like I ran Sahil at the time was like the number one player.
Yep.
Found out he lived like 5 minutes from me. So like a year, like after we won, I kind of talked to you about this previously. Like after that NFL season, we didn't play. I didn't play. I didn't play DFS till like a year and a half afterwards. Trying to figure. Then when I started like really getting into it, and that's when I met Sahil. He was kind of like on the way out. I didn't really know that pretty much. I would just go over his house, hang out. He lived in
Oh,
like
really?
he lived in like Rondo's apartment. Crazy view.
Oh, funny.
Sahil's a great kid. I know there's certain people in the industry that whatever. There's stuff that I don't really know the ins and outs, but yeah, it
Well,
was good.
he
I was
was
like,
also featured in that book that you were dueling with kings.
yeah, I knew I knew how good he was. So that's one thing that I'm very assertive of in terms of like when I'm playing DFS is realizing who's smarter than me and listening to them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like and
Yep.
trying to learn as much as I can. I think a lot of people they'll get stuck in their own thought process, and your process should really be ever changing, right?
Yep.
Um, and it doesn't matter like day to day how good you are at DFS. Like even a guy like you that has to figure out like put the work in during the day. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. For me, I have to put the work in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or else I suck. I need to know what's going on, or like that's how I see it. Like if you don't put the work in, so finding out the process to put in that work that you need to do. So I didn't ask Sahil too much about Fantasy Cruncher or data RotoQL or whatever he was using at the time, but I remember just paying attention to little things. One of the specific conversation was talking about like line movement in an Indy Cincinnati game, and just hearing like his thought process. That's just a particular one I could remember.
Yeah. So are you still do you still talk with Sahil at all?
I don't. I
Okay.
don't.
So
I wish he'd hit me up. He was a good friend of mine at the time.
Yeah, kind of a ghost of this. Well, he was like all over the place, winning everything for years, and yeah, I haven't seen the name in a while. And I know he's the one who I think he borrowed somebody else's name, Max Delury, right? He's the one who borrowed Max
Max
Delury's name for
salary, yeah.
Dallery. Yeah, that's
Or they and
kind
the
of.
kid like sued him for it, or I don't
Oh,
know.
I didn't know that part. Okay, I didn't realize that it went south that way. Um, I guess he won too much with that username. He probably made that just like as a joke, not thinking that he was ever going to like win millions of dollars using that username, and then it was going to become a thing that people knew.
Yeah, I don't think he thought that either. And then it
Yeah,
was just like he went to Sahel Sud or whatever.
yeah.
Um,
And now your friends, you say that you met Mangone, you learned a little bit from Mangone, and you're also good.
I learned a ton from Mangone. If anyone who knows Mangone doesn't stop talking. So he
Oh, I
talks
know.
to
Yeah,
everyone, and and he's a super sharp kid, and you can learn a ton from him if you pay attention. And just from a cash game perspective, and I think you have to understand that for GPPs because, like I said, you need to be able to see the board, you need to be able to run optimals, you need to be able to figure out like how people are getting to the optimal construction, even for like if you're MMEing or you just have to understand ownership, understand construction. And he really helped me with that. He was cut from like the hoop, um, rice tree, like those cash game
right.
guys that are just, you know what I mean, been
Yep,
doing it forever. So
yep,
he
yep.
was definitely very helpful to me, 100%.
And more recently, even RBX. It sounds like you're pretty close with RBX.
Yeah, RBX probably my best friend in the industry. Obviously, RBX gets himself in a lot of situations
Yes,
on
he
Twitter
does.
because he's arguing with people that were also I'm pretty tight within the industry. So it's
Yeah,
puts me in like some interesting binds. But you have to get to know RBX. He's an acquired taste. He's a very good guy. He'll be in the NFL streets. I know. I think he was on the show for his retirement. Was that it? Did he?
no, it was before his retirement. It was a few months at least before his retirement. I didn't know at the time that he was planning on retiring. But yeah, he was he was on the show. He's actually the only one that we've ever had to reshoot. I actually thought that I think I actually preferred my first interview with RBX was a little bit more fun, more interesting. And then we had to reshoot it because we lost the footage. Long story, but ultimately had to reshoot it with RBX. And it was still a great interview, but it was unfortunate that
He's
we
a
we
good.
lost
So
the interview.
RBX is like unbelievable. He'll call me at like the
He's a character.
craziest times of night and just say like the most outlandish stuff. He's just good laughs. My girlfriend is friendly with him. Like he's a good time. But yeah, learned a lot from him. Very terms like I was using Fantasy Cruncher a lot of the time. Um, and yeah, he basically taught me the ins and outs of that.
Yeah,
Talked about like game theory. Very sharp guy, good field player. Um, what like I don't know if a lot of like everyone's very projection oriented. I'm very projection oriented too, but
sure.
I'm trying to like also I play my feel as well. I think that's something you can't kind of get lost in. I know the age
Yeah,
of this whole situation is very technical, but I still think like there's a gut aspect to everything too that you kind
yeah,
of have to weigh.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
so this is the first time that I have access to your, so I sent you the questions and you took some notes here. So I'm bringing up some of your notes here for some of the questions that I'm asking. So maybe you were gonna skip over the talking about RBX and stuff, but I think it's interesting. Like I didn't like I wouldn't have known that you were close with RBX outside of you brought him up in DM a few months back. Like we talked about RBX briefly, but then also seeing it here. Like I don't think I've ever seen you guys talk publicly. So I think it's just talking about like the little friendships that exist within the DFS ecosystem that aren't necessarily like tied to any kind of work. It's just like you got to know each other. How did you meet RBX?
I just reached out to him. I forget he was crushing and I wanted to learn and he was willing to talk and he was very helpful.
You actually had him on a pod. Now I forgot about this. So before I had RBX on high stakes, I was looking up what other content he had done just to like see, find some new questions. And he had been on a pod with you.
Yeah, so maybe he was on a pod that I did or trying to do. I think I tried it a couple of times and just was like, oh, this is too much. This is a lot of work doing content, right? Like
Yeah.
ton of work. So but yeah, no, we were he was someone that I like grinded every day with for the longest time when he was playing everything. And uh yeah, just be on the phone with him 5 o'clock starts or 3 o'clock whenever I get I would always try to get in early because I need to get as much work in as probably most.
Sure.
But yeah, 5 o'clock, he would hit me up. We'd talk through slates and stuff. So that was always cool.
Let me take a minute away from this conversation with Bobby Gomes to introduce you to Stokastic's latest innovation in the world of daily fantasy sports, MLB Sims. It's just $180 per month. It's a cutting edge tool set to revolutionize the way you approach lineup building. With MLB Sims, you can now simulate lineups against each other thousands of times, unlocking unprecedented insights and in-depth metrics that enable you to identify the best lineups. This tool is unlike anything currently on the market. Simply upload a lineup CSV and with a click of a button, simulate the upcoming slate thousands of times with Stokastic's proprietary MLB simulation technology. Again, it's just $180 per month. You'll be able to easily determine the best stacks, individual players, and lineup constructions that lead to high ROI lineups. Check it out today. All right, getting back on track to my original questions. I've strayed a little bit, but tell me about your professional background prior to DFS or any related hobbies.
Yeah, I was in college and I was a waiter. Like I was going to school for comm.
At
I
your
thought
parents'
like
restaurant?
after the commercial I was gonna like do something with that, and it just never panned out.
Okay.
Um, yeah, nothing ever came of that, and just working in the restaurant and basically playing DFS.
So you were a waiter at your parents' restaurant at the time.
Yeah, waiter. Then I graduated to manager. Now everything's kind of transitioning to where I'm the head honcho, I would say.
Nice. So okay, so you didn't really have any kind of, I mean, I guess we talked about like you were very involved in fantasy sports. So like I guess that is your
Like
hobby related.
That's the thing is like that as a hobby, like that is literally like from 2001 is when I started playing and doing ESPN drafts, started fantasy leagues with my friends. Like I didn't play video games like kids did. Like I played season long fantasy. Like I wasn't into that stuff. Like I wanted to play fantasy sports. I was playing for 14 years before we won anything. Like before DraftKings was around, like that I was playing for a long time. My brother, same thing. Like him, we played every sport, every major sport. Our friends, like this is all we did.
And then so I think I have a general sense of the time frame, but like approximately when did you start getting involved with DFS? And it sounds like what drew you in is just that you were already super obsessed with fantasy sports. So it's the natural progression.
Yeah, it was the natural progression, but it didn't start till like a year after we won because it was just like NFL. And then I was just like, can I actually do this? Because in retrospect, like if I just started and we didn't win, I wouldn't have been winning money. I would have been losing, right? Like,
right.
I don't think I would have been able to make the transition. But then as other people started to do it and I started to hear about it, and obviously like I'm in the circles, not like necessarily in the circles, but just around it because of the commercial. The commercial was like playing nonstop, and everyone's like, "Do you play?" My friends play every night, and I'm like, I just play season long. Like it was just stuff that I didn't know if I wanted to, because I didn't want to be the lottery winner that gambled everything back. Like very conscientious of that. Like I bought stocks. I wasn't gonna do that. And then when I did learn to play, like I definitely paid my tuition. Like everyone kind of does, right?
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny to me that so I ask you when you get involved in DFS and you don't count like the milli or like prior to the milli, that like 3-week period. That's like you weren't really starting that. I was just like you're a casual player. You don't really consider yourself as like getting into DFS until like a year and a half later.
We were not getting into anything. We didn't know what, like I said, like keep reiterating it. We didn't know what it was. Like we had no idea.
But you won You won $1 million doing it without. So you had an idea what it was.
We had an idea what it was, but we didn't. So like legislation was up in the air.
Yeah, true.
There was a lot of stuff we were hearing that I think was a lot of smoke, but it was a lot of negative stuff. I would say.
Yeah. Well, because there are people lobbying to have it banned. Like there were some people didn't want DFS to be legalized, so there was a lot of negative spin on what DFS is at the time.
And that commercial was at the center of it. That commercial was just drawing in people. Like that's this user base that we have today still is probably the structure, but probably comes from that whole commercial montage. And they were basically it was like I said, it was up in the air whether it was the right way to kind of go about. Like you don't see commercials like that really anymore because anyone can win $1 million isn't the truth, right? So
kind of have to know what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And so you, I mean, I asked the question, were you a winning player right away? I guess I'll let you answer. Were you a winning player right away?
We were, but no, like it would have never been like that just because we won. And then I don't know, it would have never like it if that never happens, no, like it's just too at that
That's
point
also
too hard. I think just from like we didn't understand the bankroll management concept. Not like we had gone in and we just didn't play. Like we just totally like we didn't understand contest selection. Like all the stuff that you need to know was not. It wasn't like we didn't take the time out to do that. It was consistently. No, we weren't. I don't know. I can't really. I'm trying to make it so it's. I'm trying to explain. I feel like I'm losing my train of
so
thought.
so I think what you're saying is obviously you were a winning player right away in the sense that you won $1 million right away. Like so you were profitable. You
Yeah,
won a
we
lot
were
of money.
profitable,
But
but
outside of that milli, you're saying you wouldn't have been
we wouldn't
a
have been.
winning
There's
player. Like
no way we wouldn't have. We would have been profitable because just like I don't know, and we didn't play long enough to find out because we're like, all right, we're in, we're out.
that's also true of everybody though. Like if you take away the biggest wins, we're all losing players.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so it's
That's pretty much the thing. But like I said, we didn't start playing like after that NFL like couple weeks after we won week 11. We probably played through week 17. We weren't playing like we were completely out for like a year and a half. The two of us like had no interest in not like we didn't have any interest, but like we weren't. I don't know. And yeah, we didn't want to blow back money that we had just won. You know.
it sounds to me like you sort of thought DFS might be kind of sketchy. Like you won the millie,
We
you
thought
met
it was
them,
100% sketchy. Yeah, 100%.
which is hilarious because like nowadays it's so mainstream that like it doesn't even cross my mind anymore that it is like that there was a time when it was like is this site going to pay me? Like, and of course, those sites still exist where it's like, if I do win this contest, am I actually going to get the money? Those sites still exist. It's no longer a concern with like DraftKings FanDuel. Like, if you win, you're going to get paid out. You can count on that. But I forget that when you won your millie, it was still at the period where it was like there was legislation going on, or there was big conversations about like, is this a legitimate thing? Is this all luck? Is it, I think at this point, most people agreed that it's at least there is skill involved. Like, not necessarily that like skill is there might be disagreement about the ratio of skill versus luck, but I think most people at least acknowledge that yes, there is some skill involved in DFS. It's not just straight up like
Yeah.
like slots or something.
Yeah, we didn't know, like you said, like it was skill. What we did understand was it was luck. Like we knew we got lucky.
Sure.
Like we understood that yeah, we might have known we knew a lot about like fantasy sports, and obviously that's totally different relative to the structure of that the millie, right? But like you're building a head to head week to week, but it's still we knew enough to like we knew enough to make enough educated guesses to put ourselves in a position to get really lucky that weekend. Whether that would have been sustainable over a long period of time if we had just started playing, I don't think so, right? Because I don't think we understood roster construction for a specific contest. I don't think we understood, like I said, bankroll management. I don't think we understood just how, yeah, basically positive EV contest selection in general. So,
Sure.
yeah, I don't think over time that would have been the case.
So let me ask you this question because I had not realized prior to this conversation that you took a year and a half off of playing. So when did you meet Daniel Barbarisa? Because as I recall, you met him at like some big live final at like I don't know if it was at the Playboy Mansion, one of those, or like but some huge party where you met Daniel Barbarisi. Was this during the period that you were no longer playing DFS? Because I got the impression that you were like trying at that point, like you had a chip on your shoulder, you wanted to prove yourself at the time of like whenever you met him.
So we were trying with that. That was like when we were getting into trying. It was the first World Championship qualifier that they ever ran, and they flew everyone down to. I think it was the Fountain Blue, and that's what it was at the Fountain Blue.
Okay.
And yeah, that was that we hadn't really played much up until that time. Like we finished out the previous season, and that was like, and even still that year, like I don't think we put much. Like we wanted to get into the qualifier because we wanted to be world champions. We thought like that was the
Sure.
next, you know what I mean? Like it was a
Right.
horrible, we're talking about bankroll management strategy. This is not a good one. You
Right.
know what I mean?
A lot chasing live finals. Yeah.
Yeah, chasing live finals out the gate. Like there you go. But yeah, it was pretty much that. And like we're starting, yeah, we just didn't, we were so green behind the ears. And it takes experience, it takes like a lot to just to learn and putting your nose to the grindstone and trying to figure this stuff out. And when I started doing that, that's at this point, my brother's kind of in school.
Okay.
He's got a lot of he was a PA, so he's got a lot of school. And for me, that's like, man, let me like start like kicking this around a little bit. And then it was like the year after that, actually, that I met Sahil, and then that's when I started trying to play.
Okay. Then that's when you're like, I'm going to become serious about this, try and do this. And then at that point, like, did you try to go pro? Like, I mean, I guess you've always worked with your family as a
I thought
wrestler.
I tried it. I thought I was going pro. That's what I thought in my head, right? Like,
Okay.
but no, that wasn't the case. That's when I ended up paying a little bit of my tuition back, right? Like
Okay. So
that's when,
you,
yeah, I was playing NFL and I was just terrible. And I was just like, how do I figure this out? And I'm sitting in the room with Sahil, and he was crushing some weeks, and I don't know what his situation was, but he was also, I don't know, going in, out, whatever. Um,
he was also living in
it really,
Rondo's building, and so might have been paying more in rent than most of us.
yeah, he was playing 10K a month for that
Jesus.
apartment.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really changed for me when I met Mangone. That was like, because then I started trying to focus on one team, and it was more what I had like originally, like playing fantasy sports, where
Sure.
you're just building one team and you start understanding projections, start understanding how to use an optimizer, you start putting stuff together. And that's where I'm like, I think I can do this. And I wasn't great at all. Like I wasn't, but I was profitable enough. And then that's where it kind of started. And then basically thinking about, then RBX came in, and like I started MMEing because I had that, feel like my mind's always been kind of basically geared toward that, I would say, but
Toward large field tournaments.
geared toward like using an optimizer, and like, I'll build 300 and then like pick my favorites, right? Like,
Okay.
um, my mind has always been like geared toward like building, yeah, I guess building for tournaments, not as much playing like the cash game style.
Yep.
I'm trying to be uh contrarian. What was one of the questions? Would you consider yourself a, what was it, advantage player, or what was one of the
Yeah. So I think I asked if you consider yourself an exploitative player. Were you taking advantage
exploitative
of
player?
other
For
people's
me, yeah,
mistakes?
like I'm trying to like I want to see the board. When I think about contests, if I'm paying up, I know I'm pretty much on who's using what projections, or what projections are going to be prioritized. Thinking about ownership, thinking about how I can circumvent ownership.
Yep.
Um, in baseball, I think baseball is the purest form of like fantasy sports in general, or DFS or whatever. They're so like, projections in baseball are so far behind. Yes, don't get me wrong, projections in this industry are the best they've ever been, but I think like there are still tweaks with baseball that I think people miss out on. I think that there it can be leveraged, especially if you dig deep. Uh, like I'm in plate IQ a lot. I'm on Fangraphs a lot. Um, I'm looking at projections a ton. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, that's pretty much how I kind of approach it.
So in which sport or sports do you think you have the biggest edge then?
MLB, PGA. I like to MME. Like even if it's like UFC, like I'm fine. My like worst sport on the other side of that is NFL, but it's more of a contest selection situation.
Okay. Because you're
Like
playing the Millie.
no, I don't think the Millie's a bad, like, yeah, the Millie's a bad contest, but like I don't know, maybe it is. Maybe I still haven't, but I chase Qs too much in NFL.
Okay.
Sure,
Yep.
I won't be chasing Qs. Um, just because the 2 million, and like, yeah, I want to win. I would rather win, like I want to be world champ, right? Like that's,
Right.
you know
Sounds
what I mean?
cool.
It
Yeah.
sounds cool, but like it's really just
Me
another
too.
week for that
Yeah.
person. Sounds
Sure.
great, you know.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, that was so like that's, I'm an NBA, I'm like baseline. I don't do the, I should be more. feel like a guy like Petty's like digging through minutes. Like Petty's definitely has like every like I feel like he'll figure out like the minutes around the industry, and then he has like situations where the projections around the industry are like 3 minutes off.
Yeah.
I think for me in baseball, that's kind of like what it is. I feel like.
Okay. Yeah. See, I don't have that at all in baseball. I just use the projections as they are, try to run a bunch of unique kind of combos of teams and stuff. So that's interesting for me to hear you. Maybe I need to dig into the weeds a little more because this year has not gone well for me. I've had years in the past where what I do works great. This year, I have not had quite the same success in baseball that I've had in some past years. But for NBA for sure, I think for sure I'm like, man, maybe this is the year I'm gonna just dig into it like Petty does and spend hours trying to figure out where the rotational edges
I
are. That
I feel like I have to do more of that in NBA. I don't NBA to me is like I don't know. I feel like I'm a very baseline guy. Like I can have some winning days, have some losing days. I don't know, but I feel like I could be better. At the end of last year, I was better. Um, I was using a different set of projections. I thought they were a really good set of projections. Uh,
okay?
yeah,
You switch things up towards the end of the year. Interesting. Yeah,
yeah.
it's yeah, NBA. I still think of NBA as being my best sport, but results definitely would tell me that it's NFL. All right, let's talk process a little bit. So, do you do any simulations or use simulations from outside sources at all in part of your process?
I'm looking at all the sims. Like I look at Awesemo sims. I look at Saber. I look at the bats, like the sims of the bat has. In terms of
Okay.
like building my own sims, or no, that'll never be something I can do. Sim for contests, I think, is super important, which I don't know. Does Osmos really sim for contest? Yeah, it does. So yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah, that's a new thing this year. So we came out with contest level sims this year for the
yeah,
first time.
yeah, so size contests and stuff. Yeah, I'm looking at that, just trying to get construction ideas and where I need to build for MLB.
And you mentioned that you use Fantasy Cruncher at least for some sports. Are you
I
typically
so
use an optimizer?
I use FC for NFL. I use FC every day, but I use it to like basically like load in projections and just look at stuff. Rotor Grinder is the one I use for MLB. It's the one I use majority for MLB. I'll use it for some, like I use different things for different stuff.
Okay.
Fancy Cruncher NFL Showdown. I'll use Saber. I think Saber is interesting for show. It's just like very seamless. Um, yeah, that's
All
pretty
right.
much PGA. I'll use either Rotor Grinders or Fantasy Cruncher depending on like what I'm. I don't know. I'll just switch off. Doesn't really
So
matter.
you mix up which optimizer you is it just like which optimizer you're most comfortable with for different sports is essentially what it comes down to?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Um, and then do you create your own projections from scratch?
No, I don't. But I you can make enough inputs in an optimizer to where I don't know if that's like the right answer. I doubt like if Brick was next to me, he'd probably be like, "You're doing it. That's not correct."
Wow.
Like,
Most of us can't be brick. Like we can't do what brick does, I think.
but yeah, I can make enough bumps to where like or just or groups or just things that I think get me to where I want to be. But that's where there's always going to be the drop off between me or a guy like Whistles or guy, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
just stuff I can't do.
The guys who have the like math backgrounds or like programming backgrounds, like yeah, they have advantages over guys like us. Like they can do things differently. So we have to find our edges elsewhere. And it sounds like you have a similar process to mine. So we have similar background, also similar process. We're like, yeah, we're not trying to do our own projections. We're using other people's projections and then trying to find little micro edges here and there where we can bump projections just to get more or less of players according to what we think maybe we can find a little edge. So it sounds like you're not actually that different from myself in terms of the way you play, and it sounds like you also don't do your own ownership projections.
No, I just find sources I like or I'll aggregate depending on like my time situation. But no, I don't do my own.
Got a question from Alex K14 on Twitter. He says, "Can you please talk about how much you prioritize projected ownership in your player pool, and if it's different for larger and smaller contest sizes?"
I play a tight pool, get over on the guys I like. And yeah, it definitely is different. Um, Higher floor guys are going to be used in smaller field tournaments. They're going to be more popular. And sometimes you just have to play the good plays, guys. Like that's literally I see stuff on Twitter where everyone's fade this guy and like don't fade everyone. Like that's like you have to play people. Like there are
Right.
guys you have to play. I think one of the next questions has to do with dupes and like I don't want to get zero dupes because that means I'm like totally off the board. Like I want some dupes because it tells me like I'm on the right path. Like yeah, I'm trying to be different in my GPP process and trying to do things differently. I don't want to be over duped, but I don't want to be under duped either to a point where I'm just not where I should be.
Sure.
Too far off the beaten path, I would say.
Yeah, and so so the way I would say that is like I would prefer to have zero dupes, but I also like I want to make good lineups. So it's like it's a matter of like, yeah, if I could make the really good projected lineups that don't have any dupes, that's great. But like some sites, that's not possible. So like it sounds like you're like, yeah, you're gonna try to avoid being extremely duplicated within like trying to make good lineups. And I guess I'm not saying this very well, but I think that I'm on the same page as you. Like I try to avoid dupes, but like I'm also not going to go for zero dupes if that requires making shitty lineups. Is that kind of what you're
That
saying?
is
Like,
exactly what I'm saying. That
right?
is exactly what I'm
So like,
saying.
yeah. So similar, like I'd love to avoid having any dupes, but like oftentimes that would require making bad lineups. So yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. Um, does your strategy differ for showdown versus main slate?
I don't play a ton of showdown outside
Okay,
of NFL. But it's similar, but it's also a different game style. For me, it kind of differs, but I still have a tight player pool. I'm still taking overweight stands on guys I like. This year in NFL, I'll definitely be super condensed. I feel like when I started, I was trying to play six QBs. That's what Sahil had advised me to do. In
just
terms of
like find six QBs for like a main slate, and then just only play those six. Don't use
yeah,
anybody else.
is just
Interesting.
find your six QBs in your 150, stack them up. You're double stacking the majority. There are times when single stacks can't there in those large field stuff, but very rarely. Um, you want to be, or just understanding, not very rarely, you want to be understanding who you can double stack versus who you can single stack, right? Like you can get
Right.
away with single stacking a Lamar
Right.
if on the other side, like you have a Mark Andrews or something like that and still ship. Um, but some of these statue quarterbacks you want to be double stacking.
Did you stack when you won your original Millie? Was that a stacked lineup?
Yeah, it was Rogers, Cobb, Nelson, three TDs from literally no two TDs each from both Jordy and Cobb.
Oh wow. Okay. So
Yeah,
you were
versus the
because
Eagles too. I
at that
remember.
point, I would assume that not everybody was stacking at that point. Like that wasn't even like a like
No, it wasn't
common
even a
thing
thing. That was
necessarily.
something we actually talked about on the phone. Like we were like, you're probably going to need. It's not going to be like a single stack or like we understood what's like what a stack was in contrast to like just saying like if it was just like obviously in season long you're not really going for a stack, but you always like if your QB stacked up with a receiver.
Right.
That was just like a simple math thing where like you might want two receivers in this contest with 100,000 people attached to your QB, right? Um,
Right.
and Rogers was the man, is the absolute man.
Apparently. Yeah. Never been a huge Rodgers fan. As a Vikings fan, never loved Aaron Rodgers, but certainly has been great for a long time. So in that sense. Yeah. Do you sweat the games?
I did originally, like I still do, but even my cut, like I was at a family party when took first, second, and third in MLB a little
This
while
year?
earlier this summer,
Yeah.
and my cousin was like you just acted like you didn't even win any money, and I'm like you pretty much experience like every situation you do this long enough, right?
Right.
Uh, so yeah, I'm desensitized to a lot of it, which stinks too. Like I hate saying that because it's kind of like I wish you want to like get that. You still get it a little, but like
How are
you
you going to get that high back, Bobby? You got to win like 5 million now to get that
really,
same high.
I don't even know, like the first one it was great, man. Like it's just like there's nothing like that first GPP takedown for any. I don't even think it matters like the dollar amount. It's just like winning. You get it. I like to win. But still, it's never as good as the first time, right?
Yeah. How could it be?
Yeah.
Um, how do you see the DFS landscape changing going forward?
I think I have a different take than most people. Like, yeah, AI can come in and totally destroy DFS. But I do think they're the other side of it is like DFS is going to be around. Like DFS doomsdayers have been around forever. And yeah,
Sure.
it's getting harder. It's getting harder, but you have to kind of adapt and play, and it's the game for everyone else. And I like competition, so I'm not really complaining. Like I don't know. I want to be the best when it's the hardest, right? Like if you really want to do this, you want to be the best when it's the hardest. Like the 2014, all those, I'm very respectful, like the industry history, like
Sure.
Sammy Knoll, first millionaire winner, CSU, first live final millie winner. Like I can name, and I mean, I know all my stuff. Like this is something that it's been a part of my life based in so many different ways that I really care about this stuff. And I hope it continues. Like I don't want to see it go away.
Same.
Um,
Same.
it's something I really care about that isn't like I have a respect for all these content guys, these guys going out grinding it, like whatever, guys playing every day in the streets or just playing or whatever. The first guy's first day hopping in, you know what I mean? Like I love this game, so I don't want to see it go away. You know what I mean?
I'm agreed. It's been, yeah, a big part
Uh,
of my life also. I'd be sad to see DFS. And I think I'm with you. Like I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. It's going to continue getting harder. It might get to the point where it's like almost impossible to beat the rake if everybody ends up using Sims and stuff, but I still think it's just going to be different though. We're going to have to find different edges as things change. But I think
yeah,
that you're still going to be able to find ways to potentially win.
yeah.
Um, got a number of listener questions for you. I'll rapid fire them, I guess. Alex K followed up. Did you buy a Zeke jersey yet? Oh, and I was going to ask, like, what does that mean? I guess it's because he went to the Patriots.
I'm out on Zeke. Out,
Okay,
completely
no,
out.
no Zeke jersey. I was thinking he was asking about it because he was part of like one of your winning lineups or something. But I just realized, oh no, it's just because he signed with the Patriots. Ike Jernigan asks, what do you eat when you perform your best?
Yep, big pasta guy. Doc says I need to cut down though. Getting a little stomach. I actually been trying to fast and stuff. Fasting terrible. Don't do it.
Yeah, it does not
Very
appeal to me.
very hard. Harder than DFS, I would say. But yeah, I have been. I'm a big pasta guy.
I mean, you work in an Italian restaurant. Like, how could you not be? How could you not be a big pasta? Do you usually just eat at your restaurant, or do you go to the neighboring restaurant sometimes?
Me and my girlfriend like to go out and like eat good stuff.
Okay,
I try like like in terms of Italian food, like I said, pasta is my favorite. It is my favorite, but like you get sick of it fast when like you're having it every day. So
sure.
yeah,
All
um,
right.
we go
So
to
you're
like
not
different places.
so you're not just eating. It feels like you could like set up a like a community thing with the other North End restaurants. Like, hey, we'll give you guys food this for lunch today. You give us food tomorrow. I don't know. Seems
There's
just to
stuff
like
that
mix
goes
things
on
up.
like that. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah,
All right. All right.
everyone's wheeling and dealing.
Shrek asks what time and day you want to grab a drink this weekend. So apparently, I know Shrek is originally from like he's a big Boston sports fan. I know he's from
He's
that
from
area.
Mass, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I said Friday night, but now I'm thinking about like what my schedule might be Friday night. It would have to be probably later in the night. I'm definitely down to grab beers or Trek.
all right. Yeah, I guess you'll have to figure this out over DM because we're also recording on Wednesday and this is going to come out on Friday. So sorry, Shrek. Gonna have to answer this privately, I guess. Um, Riz Martinez asks, how do you balance your time throughout the day and also scheduling when it comes to planning out your lineups?
Yeah, this has been harder with a 15-month-old.
I'm
I usually
sure.
get up and I'm grinding, looking at like, specifically for play. I'll start like look at plate IQ, run like first run of projections, look at everything, see where the industry's at, certain stuff, and start digging into my own stuff, doing research. 2 o'clock, I'm back at my house. I'll take like a little break from work from like 8 to 9, then I'll take a little break, go to the gym, take some time. 2 o'clock, I'm back in front of my desk, continue on the stuff that I was doing earlier, rerun projections, see where everything's at. run some sims. Yeah, in the sim streets. Uh, and then yeah, pretty much I don't know, just get into the research, make sure baseball lineups are coming out, make sure I'm on like making adjustments to lineups that I hadn't looked at previously. If new guys are in or the expected lineups different, I have to go back in and like look at how certain guys fit in plate IQ or versus certain pitchers or how certain pitchers are going to do and stuff. Oh yeah, and then it's just like building teams, building my groups up to lock.
So it's pretty involved for you. I mean, it sounds like it's not just like a 20-minute process for you. It's a
No,
multi-step throughout the day kind of process for you building your
it's
lineups.
never going to be that for me. Like that, if it is that, I'm in a lot of trouble.
All right. Tyler Tamboline asks, I was actually wondering if Bobby Longlocks was staged. Was that your real hair?
It was my real, yeah, it was my real hair. Tambo's being a ball buster there. He's my
Yeah.
guy though. I wish it was T. I wish it was staged.
It's funny because you don't actually look that different than you did back then, other than the hair. Like if you just threw on a wig, I feel like you look pretty similar to how you looked however many years ago. That was like 9 years ago now.
I'm a lot more out of shape. I'm a lot more out
Okay.
of shape. Yeah.
All right. Well,
I was in a lot
doesn't
better shape at the time.
all right, all right. Doesn't show on the screen. All right, and then we'll close it out. So this is that got through all of the other questions that I have. Just tell me about your favorite win or win celebration.
It's the one we've kind of harped on, right?
Yeah,
Like
of course.
I got to share my brother and good life experience, like in general, like you're a part of something that actually is like in DFS lore forever.
Yeah.
And a catalyst for a lot of this industry, in my opinion, are like just from like where how much money went into that commercial and how they promoted it and them building basically their user base around that whole situation or like for the way that was plastered everywhere was I don't know. At the time it was great. It was stressful at times. It was also like something I'll never forget and definitely one of the coolest days of my life.
Let me ask you this: what do you think your chances were of winning going into the Monday Night Football game?
Aguiar knew them. I'll have to ask Aguiar. He definitely knew.
Okay, because like the fact that they made a whole thing where like we're
We
gonna
had
come.
the best chance, but we just like they didn't know Jonas was gonna get the run Jonas got. If you think
Sure.
about Jonas's ownership, like 0.06%, like Jonas would have been owned if it was this week, right? If
Right.
that whole tournament, Jonas wouldn't have been, he would have been like 6 to 15%, maybe,
Okay.
like
Yeah.
depending on he would have been owned. Like he would in this day and age, he is not under 1% owned. Like people would have caught on to that. The edges in NFL are super slim at this point.
Yeah.
Which why I have to really sharpen up my contest selection in NFL because
But that was not the Monday Night Football game though, right? So you already had that locked in going into Monday Night Football.
yeah, we had it locked in. We were fading Martavis Bryant and Lev.
Oh, so you didn't have anybody in that game. So you were leading going into Monday Night
We
Football.
were
You were
leading
just fading. Okay.
Martavis. We were ahead after the Eagles Green Bay game. What was the Sunday night? No, that the Pats were the Sunday night game. So we were leading after the Pats game. The Eagles game was the 4 o'clock game versus Green Bay.
Well, it had to be it was Steelers versus somebody on Monday Night Football, right?
On
Because you
Monday
were
Night
fading.
Football, Steelers versus Titans. We were fading
Okay.
Martavis Bryant and Bell. Bryant dropped 2 touchdown passes. He catches one, we lose.
Wow. Okay.
Bell rushes for 3 more yards, we lose.
I did not realize it was that tight.
It
So it
ended up
was,
getting very tight. Yeah.
yeah, man,
We
that
had like
was
our tight end was like Michael Rivera, who had like 4 points. I'm trying to think who the defense was the defense against Kirk Cousins off the top of my head. I'm blanking on it currently.
okay. So
Um,
whoever was playing
yeah.
Washington at the time.
AJ Green, Brandon Marshall was the last guy in. I was off the phone with him and I was hitting submit and I was like, who do I put in this last spot? And I was like, Dave likes Brandon. We both were definitely on Rodgers. We loved that stack. We both like Jonas. Um, Jeremy Hill, I think, was the other running back, or it could have been Mixon. I'm pretty sure it was Hill. AJ Green was the receiver, but yeah, that was pretty much the team. Yeah.
So you're the only person I've ever asked that question to, where it's like, oh, I actually got to see your favorite win celebration. Like it was actually televised. Did you ham it up at all because the cameras were on? Like, were you celebrating extra hard, or like did you like downplay it a little bit because there was everybody there?
We were pretty fucked up. So,
Okay, you were pretty drunk at that point.
so like, I don't know if that might get beeped out, but we were pretty
Ah,
like we were drinking, we were just in the moment. I don't know. It was fantastic. Like to share that moment with your brother and stuff. Like, hey, dude, it's once in a lifetime thing. It's unbelievable.
I mean, you shared it with your brother, and you also shared it with like the entire DraftKings. I mean, not the entire DraftKings staff, but like a good portion of the DraftKings staff. Yeah, it seems surreal. Like that is.
All our friends, a lot of all our close friends were there, family, neighborhood people. Yeah, it's great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. All right. Well, those are all the questions that I have for you, Bobby. Thank you very much for coming on. Where can people find you?
Yeah, Bobby Gomes DFS on Twitter and Instagram. Work for Rotor Grinders, do content over there. Yeah, it's
All
pretty
right.
much.
Cool. So check him out, Bobby Gomes at Bobby Gomes DFS on Twitter. Thanks again, Bobby, for joining me on episode 39 of High Stakes. Thank you, Mike Lawrence, for producing as always. You can find Mike on Twitter at Awesemo. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS, and you can find the next episode of High Stakes, which should be episode 40, will be the next one after this one. That will be 2 weeks from Friday, wherever you get your podcast or on the Stokastic YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.